a lot of land to get to the house, which is fine, but it triggers a lot of things, and I don't think that it's fair to throw that all on the feet of this township. I have been on the planning commission for over a decade. We've gotten through things through here very quickly. So I don't know what's going on between, your engineer and Carol, but I've seen the way things work in this township, and they can work relatively quickly.
When?
I've done a number of projects we've been in.
I'd like to know someone that was happy.
Nobody's ever happy because everybody comes in and they expect that
I
we're
mean,
here
if
to help
that's the
them make a
case,
profit. And we're
I'm
not.
just asking. I don't think that's unreasonable, and I'm not trying to be unreasonable
Right.
here. I'm saying there are a lot of unnecessary stuffs where common sense just was not applied here.
That's fine. I hear what you're saying, but unfortunately, there are things that we have to do because the state makes us do.
I understand it. The general permit, I understand that. So let's not,
All right.
if I need the general permit from the state, let's not spend a page or 2 pages of review letters from Ms. Schuler going over something that I need from an outside agency.
Basically, I found her letters to be very complete, and it's pretty much obvious what you need to do. Boom, 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 you do it and you're done. So I don't know what the back and forth has been. That's all I have to say.
That's fine.
I know the process.
I know the process real well. I pay for it. I know it real well.
It's your job to factor that in.
I did.
Good.
That's the Reinhardts who got hurt.
No, I don't think it's fair to say that.
Oh, it is.
So I'm just curious on a completely different subject. Are you the fellow who was the supervisor in Skip Ed?
Yes. So I'm well aware of the governmental end of
Mhm.
things and the private end of things.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
You have the same plan, you wanna do it and skip back. Same location, same thing.
Mhm.
Is there a difference?
Tremendous.
And why would that be?
Because the engineer will use common sense and work with you. That's the answer.
I mean, I'll add,
My opinion.
I'll add my input for what it's worth. I mean, I've been doing this a while, I've been working with other developers. If there's state regulations, if there's saldos to follow, and I'm not picking on you, I'm just making an observation here. If there's saldos to follow, there's state laws, there's stormwater management, how is our process different from what you would experience in another municipality?
For a single building lot, I'm not talking about saldo or subdivision.
Well, we are, that's what we're bound to
Not this
follow.
is not saldo.
It's stormwater is state law, driveway permit is saldo.
I mean, this
Driveway
project,
permits a standalone ordinance, so this review, I'm going back to the very first review from November of 2017. First is reviewed relative to the driveway ordinance, that we needed safe stopping site distance, that we needed pavement, that we needed him to remove the curbing detail because there wasn't a curb, and that we needed site distance information, and suggesting that the site triangles be removed because it wasn't necessary to clear trees for that. We address chapter 77, which is the grading and excavation ordinance, which talks about the steepness of slopes being 3-to-1 instead of 2-to-1. The stream diversion measures taken during driveway culvert installation, which would be the sandbag cofferdams. Plan must indicate the proposed location and setback distances from the proposed sanitary facilities. The location of the well and the on-site septic wasn't shown on the first plan and wasn't included in the limit of disturbance. So we went through this based on stormwater management, grading, excavation, and the driveway ordinance. There was no subdivision and land development review because this was not in fact a subdivision.
and I shouldn't have to worry about neighboring properties then either.
Well, if you send more stormwater or mud to neighboring properties, then there is a problem. You do have to worry about that.
There was no reason to ask me to put the pond on a neighboring property on a plan.
That was based on an ordinance about sensitive features on adjacent properties.
I own one property, not ones down the road.
Now, I don't think anything I'm gonna say is gonna satisfy you tonight, Mr. Marino, except to tell you that we're trying to work with your engineer to pull this
And I
thing over the
appreciate
finish
that,
line.
I'm sure we'll get there.
Mhm.
And that's all I ask is just, let's use common sense and be fair, that's all I'm going to ask for.
Mhm.
And I'm not inferring that I got treated any differently than anybody else. So I appreciate you listening and understanding my concerns and why I'm here. If anyone else has anything for me, I'll be glad to answer. All right, well, thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Next we have Joe Valentine.
Sorry, thanks for the setup.
How do you follow that?
I didn't mean to hurt you, Joe. Joe Valentine from VW Consultants, representing Bruce Sandberg on this project. John Aston, the person who should be here talking about that, but couldn't make it tonight. So just for the benefit of the board, we'd like to bring you up to speed. This project has been going on for a while. I had black hair and I was about 40 pounds lighter, but that's another story.
Sorry, I'm new on the board, can you tell me where they're built?
Oh, yeah, sure. It's on Alexandra Drive. Excuse me. It's an existing 10-acre lot, currently improved with a single-family residence that Mr. Steinberg resides in.
And how many lots are you dividing it into, and how many homes are going to be built?
Okay.
Just for the...
For the record,
Yes,
so the proposal is for a 3-lot subdivision. The existing house would be 1 lot, and there would be 2 new building lots. And I hadn't planned to go through the whole history. I'll be more than happy to do that, but we've been before the board several times. We've been before the zoning hearing board dealing with some interpretations of the ordinance. One of the issues dealt with wastewater. Based on the soils here, one of the lots had a spray irrigation system. And we had no intention of using the spray irrigation system. With a quirk of how the DEP interprets these types of soils, they require us to use spray to, quote, create the lot. And then after the lot is created, we can use one of the newer alternate systems, of which one is a micro mound. It's a long, skinny sand mound. So we have gone to, planning module has gone through the health department, through the municipality at the DEP, and received planning module approval in December. It was like 5 days before Christmas, for the wastewater portion of the project. Now we need to come back into the township and pursue with the salvo requirements of that. And so looking at the letter of June 5th, that's the last letter I have.
It's been a long time,
It's been a long time, yeah, Carol's letter of June 5th. I just briefly went through it, and certainly one of the items dealt with the planning module, which has been addressed. Another item dealt with the designs of the sewage system, and we had a conversation before the meeting, I know, with that. So the question was,
We'll make it official, Joe, it's okay.
do we design spray systems, or do we design the micro mounts? And I assume that we would proceed with the micro mounts for this. Now, were you looking for actual designs, or the designs to the level that we would be submitting to the health department, or just a concept plan on the site?
Don't you normally permit each one for a subdivision?
Yeah, but we can't get a permit from the health department until the subdivision's approved, so it's kind of like a catch-22 here. And it's really not a major issue. I mean, if you want us to design the systems, we certainly can, but we usually wait until after the subdivision's approved, because there's a clock on those permits. And I can't get the permit until the subdivision's approved, and then a 3-year clock starts. Whether or not Bruce can build that within 3 years, he'll have to speak to. So I guess something on this, maybe perhaps we
I
can
think we can have a discussion between
discuss as
ourselves
to what
about a
level of
standard
detail
size.
you need to address that issue. Had an issue too of wells. Perhaps we can talk about to what level. What caught my eye was no public water supplies available.
the applicant must certify the adequacy of the private wells that will serve each lot. Does that mean they have to drill the wells?
In the history in the township, the wells have been drilled if there's not public water supply to document that there is adequate water supply, particularly if we're in the diabase geology. I don't recall if this is a diabase.
Which there is one on that lot, right? I mean, there's one on that subdivision, a well, the existing house that we built.
So in the history of the township, that's usually not been waived. It's generally been a requirement the wells be put in for each proposed lot, particularly if we're within the diabase geology. Now, I can't recall
We're not
if
diagnosed.
we're diabase or not.
Yeah, we're not diagnosed.
So if you want to ask for a waiver of that, that would be something to discuss with the planning commission and the supervisors as it goes forward.
Okay, so the normal practice is you drill and demonstrate you have quantity and
That's
quality
the
of water.
normal practice
As
in
part
the
of
township.
So the one we drilled on the house we built doesn't,
That would be great for the lot that's on the house you built, yeah.
Okay. I
That
understand
That
what
would
you're
be the
saying.
norm, yeah.
And it's something you can request a
It's
waiver.
something you could request a waiver.
Okay.
I never bought a lot with a well drilled.
The majority of other ones deal with stormwater matters, and I hesitate to dive into that since we just spent a half an hour talking about stormwater issues. But what we're requesting, if that's possible as a waiver, is that we postpone all that testing that Mr. Marino was doing at the time of permit, and not at the time of subdivision, for one reason being the exact location of the house and how the grading would be isn't really determined until you have a person who's gonna actually build the house there.
Same with the well. Where's the well for?
Well,
I don't know.
is the stormwater something that a waiver could be requested of?
Again, in the history of the township, that's not happened, this is a feasibility demonstration, particularly given the seasonal high water tables on that site and some of the other issues that you're dealing with. And I believe we've had interpretation of state of the Act 167 requirements, MS4 stormwater requirements done by the solicitor, that we really can't waive that in subdivisions. So the stormwater would need to be done as a feasibility demonstration, that was last week.
Okay. Well, we're on that subject, and maybe this is again something that you and I can talk at another time. But these soils are similar, we might do this with the whole issue of where the water table is and what have you. So we certainly have drainage restrictions fairly shallow, that's why we were talking about spray and micromounts. These systems, these stormwater systems are gonna have to be shallow, and infiltration is gonna be minimal, and other BMPs will have to be addressed.
They're very fortunate they had you on board, Mr. Valentine.
Well, I don't know about that, but the issue is that certainly gonna have to have some kind of very shallow infiltration, not dug into the ground.
Right.
The maximum maybe 8 to 10 inches, something like that.
And if you and John want to have a sit-down meeting and talk about what you're proposing and what you're doing before it's all finalized, I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Well, they're the major highlights, and I guess the well waiver we'll have to discuss. The stormwater issues, I don't want to be blunt, but it'll be going down a dead end, requesting a waiver on that. I'm not really that familiar with 167. I'm trying to look for it in the letter. Well, there it is. Submit complete drainage plan to adjust stormwater ordinance and Act 167.
Okay, dead end.
Dead end, okay, well, that's, at this point, I know John has been anxious to deal with a lot of these stormwater issues. John's probably heading in a different direction with his business, so we might be exploring the option of another firm to look at the stormwater management aspect of this. You want to add anything?
Well, just in layman's terms, that was our request to get this plan approved as is, so we can get permitting and market these lots. And then at the time of that, somebody comes in and says, I want a house here, I want something there. We have no idea where that driveway might be, where the house might be located, where the well might be located, where at that point, and just from the guy that was standing here before, how difficult it is to pinpoint what we're gonna build and how we're gonna handle it, to do it ahead of time, seems like we're doing it twice. I mean, the lot that I bought had none of that. At the time of permitting, we needed everything he talked about, then we went through everything he talked about and got the permit. We did the stormwater management, we did the septic, we did the, which we perked, but it just seems like we have no idea where any of that's gonna be or when it's gonna be.
Are you asking us to approve this today? 'Cause I
For-
think that has to go to
well,
the planning commission.
Right, well, I don't know if we've even been there, but, this plan is dated 2011. And we've come this far, and now it's to the stormwater management or the location of the well, or, this stuff that we have no idea, if we do this and then somebody comes in and says, hey, I want the house here, I wanna do this, I wanna do that. When we go to build that and submit a permit, that exact design is what all that stuff is gonna be based on. So I'm gonna be standing here like this guy was a minute ago, when I go to sell the house.
So we had a subdivision years ago along the road where you, Simmons Road, and that applicant, it was actually John Aston did the plan, as I recall, and he prepared a 2 or 3 lot subdivision, and he didn't want to put up an escrow to secure the improvements, so he actually put in the stormwater facilities, even though the houses aren't there yet. They're coming in for building permits now. From what I understand from Dave, I haven't seen them yet, but they'll be using those stormwater facilities, they were approved and built. And the only caveat is they've got to make sure the roof's drained to those facilities. So it's been part of the subdivision process, it's written into the subdivision process to address the stormwater management requirements as part of the subdivision process and demonstrate the feasibility of them. And it's not necessarily a wasted effort today on what will happen tomorrow.
How big was the lots that you were referring to?
I think they were actually larger than yours, if I recall correctly.
Because, somebody could want a house back here, somebody could want a house up by the street, we don't know, the house is back here, none of those tests, nothing we're doing today is gonna,
Right,
matter.
what you're providing is essentially a feasibility study that says this can be done. And if their proposal is in general approximation with what you show, then a lot of that work can be used.
But
And
you
if
know,
not-
I have to tell you, what they designed on that Simmons Road, destroying the road, the shoulder, and the property at the bottom. Go up and look at it. So whoever designed that, I'm gonna tell you, it was a bad setup. Now, you know that yourself.
You're talking about the swale along the road that he
You-
designed.
Whoever designed it, put a swell through that whole field and drained that whole field right out into Simmons Road.
No,
Oh,
the
yes, it
basins are
is.
further back.
There's ballast in a V in a gulch all the way up through that field. Go up and look at it.
You can take a look at that.
That is coming out of that field, unbelievable, and it's, I'm telling you. Go up and look at Simmons Road now. There's 3-foot gutters on the side of it.
Actually, I think there were 3-foot gutters on the side of that.
No,
for
not,
a lot of years.
no.
and the other thing, we don't, it's not like we're gonna build, we don't know if we're gonna build this house next week, next year, or 5 years from now. So we don't, the improvements are sitting there for,
That's if you build them. The option would be to build them or escrow them, but have the money to do it. But getting back to the point of the subdivision design, for lack of a better word, for stormwater management versus a permit for constructing a house. At what point is there such differences to that design from subdivision to actual building permit? Would you have to redo all, and it's tough to answer, how would you have to redo it all? If we're basically putting the stormwater in the general area that it was designed, but the house location may be different, the driveway may be different, but the drainage still goes to the original design, is that something?
Then it's, then it's very minimal work to.
It's only when it would be
right,
addressed.
who's to say that today versus when we build the house, and I'm standing here like this guy was standing here, trying to get something where there's already a plan made.
Aren't the stormwater requirements, didn't they come from the state?
The stormwater requirements came from the state and from the county. The Act 167 portion comes from the county, but it was done in conformance with the MS4 program of the state, which
Right.
is complying with the Clean Streams
And the
law.
only reason that we're enforcing those is because we've been forced to.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I don't, Tom, I don't think there's any argument that you're, you know, what's been put at the,
Mr. Sabrick builds a beautiful home. We understand that, and
yeah, it's.
we'd love to have more of them in
it's
the
just-
township. It's-
Just the question of when to do all this work is the
Yes, sir.
issue we're discussing. It has to be done at some point, obviously.
Well, and the other aspect that it's not as easy to say, but it's reality, is every cycle of permitting, every cycle of MS4, every cycle of Act 167 planning, every cycle of Clean Streams laws, this is a lot more challenging to do now than it was 10 years ago. And it was a lot more challenging 10 years ago than it was 10 years before that. So by performing the design at the time of subdivision, sort of like that fellow on Simmons Road, you're almost giving yourself a leg up so that you get the stormwater in based on today's regulations and not what comes down like tomorrow. Just a personal opinion, and use that for what it's worth. Things don't get easier, regulations don't
Oh,
generally reduce.
tell me anything about
All right,
that.
so when I purchased the property, it wasn't there, and we submitted a building permit and design, and based on that building permit, the size of the house and the design, we designed every other aspect around what was submitted at the time.
Yes, sir.
That was an existing 10-acre lot, I recall. You did a beautiful job.
Well, I mean, the main purpose was obviously to blow the dust off this project and ask you for some direction on potential waivers. I think we heard the issue with regard to stormwater. Wells is probably something we'll be revisiting with you, because it's not ever die race, and we have wells in the area, so I'm sure that we can demonstrate there is adequate water quality out there. Ben, anything to add? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any,
Have it going.
do you have anything further? I know you sent me that other email, you were okay with everything with the potholes and stuff?
Yeah, there's more that I didn't get to you, but I'm sure Tommy will find them.
Okay. Alright, so you're good? Any other public comment?
I would like to thank the engineer for the diligence on the.
Your name, ma'am?
My name is Sherry Schweikert, and I live on Schwank Road. I'd like to thank the engineer for her diligence on the applications that are coming in for her thorough review. As a resident of this township, and someone who could someday be a neighbor to one of the developments.
Thank you, that's a nice way to end the meeting. Thank you.
Dan Orff, I second what she said.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a motion to adjourn? Or do you wanna do an executive session? Or you wanna?
Well, actually, I mean, for Terry,
Big lower
the discussions that were held at that meeting, would that be helpful tonight?
Yeah, I think we should.
Okay, well then I'll hold off on the motion then.